with successful bar exam students. This is episode, I think it's 25 maybe. And wow, it's great. I love doing these, and I love doing them with students that I had really a good opportunity to get to know and enjoy the time with. And that's certainly the case today. I want to welcome a new member of the Florida Bar, Mike Witzke. Hi, Mike. How are you?
Hey, Jackson, how are you?
I am great, but probably not as good as you today, right?
Definitely feeling a little bit of a relief at this point.
Yeah, yeah. Mike, your story, I mean, typically when I do these hangouts, very often these are stories of people who've overcome these amazing, extraordinary, superhuman barriers to get through the bar. And I would have to say you're just more kind of a regular guy. And I don't mean that as a disrespectful kind of thing, because I know you had your challenges, but I think it's really great to share the story of somebody who just, no drama, just goes in and does it and passes on the first try, which is what happened to you, right?
Well, I'm glad to hear you say no drama, because I know in about 3 of our calls you said, Mike, no drama. You have to stop this. You're getting way too dramatic. And you calmed me down and kept me from losing it many times. So that was good.
Well, good. Well, let's back up a little bit, and why don't you share with our audience a little bit about your background and how you came to be in a position where you needed and wanted to take the Florida bar.
Right. So I'm a trust and estates attorney in Michigan. Have been practicing now for about 27 years. And when I say that, I can't believe it. But I went back and actually checked the diploma as to when I graduated. So it had been 27 years since I had taken a bar exam, since I had looked at con law or Civ Pro. But a number of my clients spend about half the year in Florida. I recently, 2 years ago, joined a new firm that has 2 offices in Florida. We don't really have a strong trust and estates practice down there. So it was kind of a 3-pronged issue. I wanted to help service my clients who were in Florida, who own real estate in Florida, without running afoul of the unauthorized practice of law rules. I had an office there that could use help in the trust and estates area. And being from Michigan, I liked spending some time in Florida in January and February, and this gives me an opportunity, hopefully, to do that going forward.
Yeah, I mean, who knew? A Michigan attorney wants to go to Florida. Stop the presses. Yeah, so 27 years is a long, long time. I'm guessing you might have even had hair back then.
I did.
I just
I had great hair back then.
There you go. We all did. We all did. And by the way, folks, this is my real hair, okay? Internet trolls think I'm wearing a wig. But when you started thinking about going back to take the bar, what was that like for you in terms of just sort of the was it daunting? Was it a little frightening, overwhelming at all?
It was. And, I really didn't know taking the bar exam all over again just was kind of very scary. In my mind, I thought, okay, I'm going to have to just kind of shut down my practice for 2 weeks and just cram and, take a big bar, type review. And a month before, it was kind of really uncertain. And, finding you and having conversations with you really kind of helped me understand that was not the way I wanted to do it. Mm-hmm. And it worked out. It worked out very well.
You kept your practice going all the way through your studies.
Right.
How many hours a week would you say you were studying, and for what period of time?
Well, I think I started in February when I found you, and you said, it's not too early and it's not too late, but the earlier you get started, the better it's going to be. So, I started out, and I know your guidelines were about 15 hours at some point to get into that rhythm, and honestly, I don't know that I ever got there. Mm-hmm. Probably about 10 a week was what I was studying, and then as I got toward the end, it was obviously a little bit more. But really, for me, I'm a kind of follow the rules guy, and so getting your outline and being able to just kind of cross things off and slowly go through and know there was a process there. Know that you read the material, you listen or watch the lecture, you do the problems, and it was a system, and you build that really was reassuring, because I could see that progress going forward. And even though I was worried because there were sections I hadn't looked at yet, our conversations that we had during our essay reviews, you're always like, just trust the process, Mike. You gotta trust. You gotta have faith, and that's what I did.
Yeah,
so.
Yeah, and you were very diligent. I mean, I could pretty much count on a weekly phone call with you to go over the work. I mean, you followed the instructions very carefully. And there were times I recall when we had conversations and you were dressed, in the suit, and in the office. But then there were some weekend calls, when you were coming into the office to study, right? This was your study spot on the
Well,
weekends
actually,
too,
I
right?
mean, there was some calls we had that were in what I called the bunker in
Yeah,
my
okay.
basement. I had an
Oh,
office,
okay.
and so I was down there with a T-shirt on, and you're like, "Wait, is this the guy that's usually in the suit all the time?" But it
Yeah,
was me.
yeah.
But I mean, it was a process that worked out. I mean, started. I don't know if you remember. Started a little shaky. I tried to do this with the phone using FaceTime and kept losing the call.
Yeah, most
Then
of the
we went
calls
to
you were hanging upside down for
Well, then
some
we went to
reason.
Skype, and
Yeah,
I was
yeah.
upside down for about the first 3 calls, which was a little disconcerting.
It
And
was a
so
little
we
weird, yeah.
started kind of rocky, and but eventually, I kept saying, "I can't do this. I can't." And you're like, "Mike, stop, relax, follow the process." And finally, I bought in and was fine. So it worked
Yeah,
out very well.
yeah. And I want to talk a little bit about this process. I mean, this is not Nick Saban at Alabama, but there is a process to this, and you bought into that process. But at the beginning, it was a challenge for you, wasn't it? Getting into the style of writing and just doing bar writing as compared to the work that you were doing on a regular basis as a transactional attorney, for example.
Yeah. I mean, and like I say, I don't do a lot of writing in my practice, and so that was the thing that I had a hang up. Right, like I said, I can't write, and I'll never forget the first time I talked to you. I just called the number. And you picked up the phone, and I'm like, "Who is this guy that's answering the phone?" It's got to be some guy doing sales, trying to sell this program. And I explained to you who I was and what I was doing, and I said, I'm going to have to write this thing. And you stopped me, and you said, "Mike, no, you're going to have to get it on the computer and type it." I said, "Well, I'm not a very fast typer. I can't, You said, "Well, good news is you got 5 months. Learn how to type because you're already behind the 8 ball coming from up north, with Florida. They're not real excited about having you join their bar. And if you write that thing out, which would have been a nightmare." So, I think just from the very start, before I'd even decided to go with you, you were coaching and it's those little things behind, about the exam. I mean, there's obviously the content that you got to get your hands around, but there was a lot of stuff that I would just tell people that, especially if you're in a situation like me, where I was working 50, 60 hours a week with my practice and studying another 10 every week, and not having taken a bar exam in 27 years, the little tiny pieces that your program provides that are kind of give you confidence going in there. You know what's coming. You know you can handle it. It doesn't matter what the question is. You have a process that you can go through. And that for me made all the difference. I didn't care what their questions were. I didn't get hung up on, well, they can test me on these 6 subjects. I don't know which one it is. And they could test me on the 7th one, which they've never tested before. I didn't care. And I studied everything. I had a process as how I was going to deal with those. And that was really my biggest hang up was the essays, because back in 1850, when I took the bar exam the first time, if you scored high enough on the multistate, they didn't even read your essays. You just you passed.
Right.
And so my essays were not graded the first time around. So I had that kind of cloud in the back of my head saying, well, you may be even worse writer than you think you are. So having this process to be able to tackle this, I had great confidence coming in and feeling like I wasn't worried what they were going to ask because I knew what I had to do. And, your focus on, find the conflict and talk about what that conflict is, both sides of it, and then make a decision. You could be right, you could be wrong, and even giving the background of the bar examiner's material where they say, don't even worry about whether the kid gets the question right. Did he see the answers and did he give a strong reason for the side that he picks to be right at the end? And that to me said, you know what, I can't get stressed out about this. I just got to find the conflicts and, talk about them and come up with a solution that's tied to law. And that was very, very effective in getting me through that.
Yeah, I remember when we were doing your first early essays, it was a bit of a challenge for you to get it on typewriter, get it done in 60 minutes,
right,
show the structure and so on. But as you submitted work and we'd talk about it and you'd come back, and there were a few times when you rewrote some pieces and kept working, the style and structure became automatic to you, didn't it? I mean, it was just what you did. And coming into the last stretch before the July exam, you were just turning out work, and it was just really consistent. It was just like, that's the level every single time. And I think you knew that that's what was happening, and there was some comfort there. On the multi-state side, what was that process like? I mean, man, it's a lot of material to cover. How did you manage that?
Well, I think, you know, the big piece that really resonated with me was the ability to kind of, you almost internalize the information through the process of reading, listening to the lectures, and then doing those programs where I'll tell you this, I've always been very good at multiple choice exams. I never really realized why, but you know, you kind of said it's, if you allow yourself to use that intuition and not sit there and try to think, oh, what are they trying to do? Are they trying to trick me on this one? But just kind of going through quickly, getting a sense of what it is. And, you know, the big thing is making sure you understand the question first. But, I mean, I was able to I got up, you know, from the exam with probably 45 minutes left, and I wasn't worried that I didn't, you know, I didn't answer it appropriately. And I mean, I got up and walked out, and it was great. And in my back,
multi-state score is really good, by the way, folks. I mean,
was the story that you told me about when you took it, and the woman said, "Don't give up" or whatever.
Don't give up, sweetie. I'm done, lady. You know, what do you want me to tell you? Yeah, and I mean, and your multi-state scores were good, and your Florida scores were good too. I mean, you didn't just squeak through; you passed really easily. Your family, what did they think about all of this?
Well, my wife, you know, luckily she watched the video to a spouse that you have as part of the program. And she was very supportive. I mean, I tell you what, there was a lot of events in that 4 or 5 months that I just kind of was, I can't go, I can't do it. You know, there was a lot of nights where we were invited to go drink wine when I knew the next morning I would have to be, you know, cranking. And so I feel, you know, that, I mean, she was great. My wife was very supportive. I have 3 boys, only one of whom is still at home. And, you know, they all kind of knew Dad's going to crack down and do this. And, you know, I'm a runner, so I've been through a number of marathons, and it's the same kind of thing. You know, you got to get up on Sunday morning and run 20 miles, whether you feel like it or it's raining outside. And I kind of approached this the same way. Mm-hmm. You know, I had a schedule, and I knew if I did everything, I'd done everything I could to get through. So the greatest thing for me, though, was at the exam, I was surprised. I had a real peace that I felt like I'm not stressed out about this. I've done everything I needed to do, and so I'm going to trust. I'm going to trust in Jackson, and it turned out to be great. Yeah, not that there wasn't a little anxiety that Sunday night before the exam scores came out, but for the most part, I slept well.
Yeah, and when the scores came out on Monday, tell me about that. What was that like?
Well, you know, it's I was following the Florida Bar on Twitter, which and I got in at about 8 o'clock.
Isn't it? Yeah.
Got in at 8 o'clock. Pulled up the Florida Bar page, and it didn't have anything. And then I got the tweet that the exam results were out. And I was like, went to the page, they weren't there. Refreshed the page, boom, they were there. And you know, you open it up, and there's all these numbers, and so about 3 times I took the paper up and, you know, held it up to the screen like this to make sure I was really reading pass. Okay, that's me. Okay, good. You know, I had the number on my page. I was like, yeah, that's my number. So it was a real relief. It was really a good feeling. But like I say, it was, I mean, you know, as you said, I compare it to a marathon because you can't really cheat. You can't, I mean, you can go out and run a 5K without a lot of practice, but 26 miles is 26 miles. And the full bar exam, there's no cutting corners, you know, and you told me that multiple times, Mike. You got to do the work, you know, just trust me, just do it, and you'll be fine. And you were right.
Yeah, so, and I think that's a great segue to just ask, what advice would you give a practicing attorney who's thinking about taking the Florida bar?
Well, it's funny because since I've passed and kind of announced it, and one of the things that I did, and I don't know if it was good or bad, but I told all of my clients, I'm taking the Florida bar. I told all my referral sources. And so that Monday, or, you know, these last few weeks, I've gotten, clients come in and they've said, so did you pass? Did you pass? And I'm thinking, oh my God, had I not passed, this would have been a nightmare. But the advice I would give to somebody who's thinking about this would be obviously, and I've been asked, that came to that is I've been asked a number of times by lawyers now, did you use a review? How did you do this? And there's no question. For me, I would never have been able to do it in a Barbary or something. I probably can't say that,
That's
but
okay.
a big
That's
box,
okay. That's okay. They don't pay attention.
big box type thing where you've got, lectures and books, but without the one-on-one. And that's what I needed, is just kind of somebody who could bring it back in and say, here's what you need to worry about. Here's what you got to do. And if you do this, you'll be fine. And so, my advice to people who are thinking about taking it is, for me, I don't know that I could have done this without you, Jackson.
Oh,
so again,
I'm
very, very appreciative for the help that you gave, and the one-on-one coaching, and the kind of bringing down to earth, and the ability as we got to the home stretch, when I was sending you my scores, saying, am I gonna pass with this score? And you kept saying, settle down, you're gonna be fine. Just that's a good score. If you keep doing that, you'll be fine. And that's the confidence I took into the exam. And I said, what, I've been doing this. Trust my intuition. Don't get freaked out. I was a little disappointed there wasn't a fire or an explosion in the room, because I was kind of hoping for something really disruptive that was going to happen.
Yeah.
That didn't happen.
Yeah, I'm sorry to let you down that way.
But just being in a room with 3,000 people, and you're looking around and there's people everywhere, and you want to go to the bathroom, it's a 5-minute walk to get to the edge of the room. That is, you gotta be able to kind of just focus, and so it was, like I say, the content was great. The material was fantastic, but it was the one-on-one, just the little discussions we had before we talk about the essay, where you kind of say, "Yep, Mike, don't worry about that," or "Yes, that is something to worry about. You should do these 3 things, and that'll get you through it." That's really what made the difference for me, was the kind of the individual coaching that you gave.
Yeah. And you were in the personal mentoring program for people that are sort of thinking there's basic and personal, and so you were in that program. And we talked, I think we probably talked 15 to 20 times. Sometimes you were upside down,
right, hanging from the ceiling a number of times.
But those kinds of conversations, I think the continuity and the consistency of them really helped you kind of become more comfortable and aware of what you needed to do, and start to hone in and focus and get to that point where you were saying, okay, I can do this. I know what the goal is now. I can aim for that, and I'm hitting that goal. And so there was sort of a mutual accountability there. I was asking you to do the work, but you were doing it and giving me the feedback of what you were doing, and then I could give you additional feedback. And I think that's the ideal way to go through this process. And for those of you who are watching or listening and have other work life, whether it's in law or not, I mean, one of the keys to Mike's success, it seems to me, was his ability to say, I'm not going to go crazy. I'm not going to stop and study 50 hours a week. I'm going to study 10 if I can do it, but I'll put in the 10 and I'll get them done, and I'll follow it all along, and the early start. That
was key, and it's because it gave me the time to get through everything, review, figure out where I was strong. And like I said, there were a lot of those subjects, and certainly with Florida, the Florida Constitution, unless you went to a Florida law school, you never saw, and you just had to learn it. You had to learn Homestead in all of its manifestations, and for me that's good, because I need that now for my practice in Florida. And so I have a love of constitutional law, and so it was kind of fun for me to get back into that and look at the different things, especially in the world we live in today. But it's it was a good experience. Certainly, I don't want to do it again. But it's done, and now if I can get through character and fitness, I'll be all set.
There you go. Well, the pass rate in Florida on this exam was 48%. So you beat the odds. For out-of-state attorneys, it's a pretty tough road to hoe. And that's why I'm so excited whenever we've got somebody that accomplishes this on their first try and has all of the obligations of family and work and some distance. You're what we think of as a distant bar taker. You came from a long time ago in a different location, and Florida is a unique jurisdiction in terms of all of its specific state rules. So I think there are a lot of things, for those of you who are watching and listening, that you can bring down from what Mike's experience was, that it is possible to do this. You just have to commit yourself to the work and the time and the effort. And I'm excited for you, excited that you get this experience. I'm really glad you didn't have to tell all those clients and friends that you didn't pass.
Or be on the front page of our website saying, Mike didn't pass, so give him your condolences.
Yeah, I love. Before we hit the record button, you said if you failed, your firm had pretty much told you they were going to make fun of you. I love that kind of.
Well, that's the thing. I called. I was like, will you guys pay for me to take this exam? And they said, we do pay for the first time. But a lot of the lawyers don't tell us. They just ask for reimbursement after they've taken it, because if you don't pass, there will be the shame of the whole firm coming down upon your head of this. So I jumped in and trusted the system, and I think that there's a lot to it. There's a lot behind the scenes, and that's what I can't stress enough. I mean, the content is the content, but it's all the extra stuff, the videos on meditation, the focus on the way that you can capture this internally, and then just rely upon your intuition to find the answers, to have calm in what can be a very stressful process. Like I said, I don't know how I could have done this without Celebration Bar Review. So I'm very, very appreciative for everything, and I miss our weekly conversations.
Me too. I don't get a chance to make fun of your bald head.
Exactly.
This will be my last chance. But seriously, I did enjoy those conversations, and I enjoyed the fact that you were teachable. When I talk to people about answering multiple choice questions intuitively, that's hard to do. It's hard to kind of put yourself in that spot, but you did it. Your multi-state scores are really good. It obviously worked for you. And every part of the process you just embraced and did. And to me, that's a big part of the ability to be successful at all things. So I'm very appreciative of that. You're sort of the classic ideal student for us to have, and it's great to be able to work with you and share that success with you. I really want to thank you for spending time today and sharing your story and being part of this. If people want to contact you, how can they find you?
Well, I don't know. I mean, certainly they can email me. That would be fine. And I don't know if you want me to say my email address is probably difficult with my name, but I'm sure you can probably put a little blurb or something. I'd be glad to hear from folks and share additional information. But certainly somebody who's, as you said, a distant bar taker, someone who hasn't got into this, who's got a practice, or who's got a life that's taking up a lot of their time, and I think this is a system that works. Clearly, it worked for me, and I'd be glad to answer any questions that folks have about the process.
Well, great. Well, thanks, Mike. It's been great talking to you. Congratulations again from all of us. We're very excited for you, and it's a great accomplishment for anybody to get, and you've just done a spectacular job with this. And so I want to say thanks to all of you for watching and listening, and we'll be back again soon for the next episode in these Hangouts with Successful Students. And so for now,